everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director of GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And welcome to a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, your weekly deep dive into all the latest and greatest in the world of physical media. Welcome back. We have another amazing show for you this week. I have so many titles that I'm going to dig into that I'm excited to talk about. I have stuff from Disney, Paramount, Vinegar Syndrome partner labels, Arrow Video, 88 Films, just some of my favorite labels that I cannot wait to share with you. So I'm going to dig right in with one of the ones I was most excited about from this year, and that is the 4K Ultra HD release of Lilo and Stitch, the original Lilo and Stitch from Disney. This has been given the 4K upgrade with, I love this cover art. It's much better than Disney usually gives some of their modern 4K releases, so I'm glad that they went with something very classy and nice. Same underneath, no reversible cover art. So this is the Disney classic from the early 2000s, given a 4K refresh in Dolby Vision. For those who don't know, it's just a tale about an alien creation that escapes to Earth and finds a home with two sisters. One's like an older sister and one's like a kind of a child, who in Hawaii, and they learn to become family in the midst of Stitch, the aliens' destruction and stuff, and just trying to learn how to be family and learning the place to fit in and going against your genetic programming to be destructive and all that stuff. And there's a lot of great emotional things within this story that has always resonated in me ever since I saw it as a kid in the theaters. It's just always been one of my favorite, kind of the last gasp of like Disney animation studios, like 2D magic. It's just such a great story, and I am very suspect of the upcoming live action remake of this one, but the original is perfect in my opinion. And this 4K upgrade is very nice. I had the previous Blu-ray release. It was one of the older Blu-ray 2-pack with the sequel on one disc. So that it's actually a pretty good upgrade for me, because that disc, while it has some benefits, which I'll talk about here in a second, does house two films on one disc. This has one film on a 4K Ultra HD disc in Dolby Vision. So there are much less in the way of compression artifacts and stuff like that. This just gives much deeper resonance to the colors. There's some nice line detail. There's not like a major upgrade just because of how this was animated. The source is being upscaled to 4K, but it looks fantastic. I think this is the best the animation can look. It is really the Dolby Vision and the more stellar encoding that is really giving this one the upgrade that I think it deserves. You also get a nice Dolby Atmos audio bump, which sounds really great as well. And it really just makes this tale very immersive, especially with a lot of like the spaceships flying around and stuff at various points, or even like the waves crashing down. It sounds really great in Atmos. The one thing I wanted to note, for those who are aware of such things, there is a version of Lilo and Stitch that has been edited. It's been this way for quite a while on like streaming platforms and Disney Plus and everything. I believe there is like a law in the UK that required for Disney to edit this for one very quick scene in which Lilo is hiding from her sister. In the original version is in a drying machine. But they were afraid that too many kids would actually think this was a viable hiding place, and it might harm kids who are wanting to emulate the movie that they love. So they changed this very hastily in the animation to like a kind of a outline with a pizza box on it. So it doesn't really quite make sense. Maybe it looks kind of like a cabinet, but it is kind of just like a weird replacement, and there's like a little audio cue that doesn't show up because you don't get to hear the squeaking of the dryer being closed as well. But it is just that one moment, and the only way you can actually see this on Blu-ray is that original Blu-ray disc that I told you that I owned with the 2-pack, and it's the older version. That still has that intact, but while I do not condone censorship in any way, shape, or form, I am willing to overlook this very minor bit of animation in this instance, for this new censored version with the pizza box, just in much better quality in 4K, and it just does look a lot better than my old Blu-ray. For those who do have that old Blu-ray disc, you may just want to hold on to that just for those who ever want to check out that uncensored version, which is weird to say about a children's film, an uncensored version, but that it seems that is the case. But this is a great 4K release regardless. And the audiovisual presentation is terrific. This has been a title, at least on Blu-ray, that hasn't had a lot in the way of special features. And that kind of continues. On this one, you do get a couple of featurettes and music videos and stuff, but there's nothing too crazy in depth, like some a Hulu lesson, and you do get an audio commentary. But what is missing from the original DVD release is there's like a really great documentary that still hasn't been ported over here. So if you have the old DVD release, which I stupidly sold off without knowing about this documentary, hold on to that one. But otherwise, this is a really great release from from Disney for Lilo and Stitch. In 4K, it's a really, really great release, and I think if you're a fan of this movie, you will be very pleased by how this looks on 4K Ultra HD. But staying in the world of animation, getting a little bit more adult, we have the Warner Brothers release of Rick and Morty, the anime. So this is kind of a spin-off series, one-off of the hit Adult Swim show Rick and Morty. This kind of started as a series of shorts that were conceived, and they made it into a full 10-episode series here, which you can now own on Blu-ray. So I was really intrigued by this. I know I didn't get to watch this as it was airing, and because I'm a big anime fan, and I'm a pretty big Rick and Morty fan. They had their ups and downs, but overall I do really like the show. So I was really intrigued by this, and overall I think it is pretty decent, but it doesn't quite reach its full potential, I would say. It doesn't quite have the same degree of humor as the OG original Rick and Morty. What this has going for it is kind of the artwork that's kind of pretty interesting, but some of the themes, because it's a different creative team handling this version, the anime version, that never quite congeal in the right way, that maybe works a little bit more tonally consistently in the American version. But I do think there's some interesting episodes in here. You don't have any of the original voice cast on this. There's all new people here. This does offer both the Japanese and American version. The English dialogue is prioritized. It is given a DTS 2.0 audio, whereas the Japanese dub is presented in Dolby Digital Lossy 2.0. For those who do want to watch in Japanese, there's only one set of English SDH subtitles, so there are the descriptors and stuff that are used for each version. So if you need subtitles for both the English or Japanese tracks, they are the same. So it's probably not completely accurate as well, but you will get those descriptive like creaking and stuff like that, those effects on the subtitles if you watch the Japanese and you don't speak Japanese, just to be aware of that. So this isn't like fully decked out in the way that is like friendly for like you can watch this in Japanese and stuff. It's just like they didn't go the extra mile to make this kind of fully immersive and stuff, and the way they could have given a couple of different subtitle options and stuff, but they didn't. It's a pretty decent offshoot of Rick and Morty. I don't like it more. I don't think it's like a complete failure either. It's a different beast altogether. I think if you're a hardcore fan of the series, it's worth owning. If it's your first experience with the series, I don't think it'll really make an impact. And this is more just kind of like an Elseworld, because there's the Rick and Morty, for those who don't know, deals a lot with like multiverses and stuff. So this is just kind of like an alternate story that kind of ties in at points, but it's really kind of more of a standalone effort that ties in eventually. So not my highest recommendation of this one. It's really just for diehard fans, but those who do care The visual presentation's good, nice bold colors, nice crisp lines, no major compression artifacts. And the audio sounds decent enough. Even the lossy audio doesn't sound super weak. I just think that also should have been a lossless audio just to have them on equal terms. But no special features as well. So for diehard fans, Rick and Morty, the anime, that is now available. And now switching over to a movie that came out the end of last year. Didn't do much business, but got a lot of online discourse. We are heading over to Paramount's release of Better Man. This is the Robbie Williams biopic, where he is played the entire time by a CGI monkey. So this is part of the Paramount Presents banner. This is the first kind of like modern release that's been released under this. So that's pretty interesting that they decided to do that. I think they probably just wanted to guarantee a few more sales for collectors who felt that they needed to complete their series. But this is the only way, I believe, to get the Blu-ray is in this 4K Blu-ray combo pack. The movie itself, I watched it around the time it came out, and I wasn't completely negative, but I was more on the lukewarm side of things. After watching it a second time, I'm a little bit more positive on things, but I still don't think it's quite as amazing as some factions are saying it is. Because while there is a CGI monkey playing instead of this character, it is in the end a pretty standard biopic, and it just really goes from his young days up until his struggles with he's getting into his band, breaking out solo, his struggles with substance abuse, his daddy issues, all that kind of stuff. I don't mind a fantastical biopic. I really love the Elton John one, Rocket Man, that has a more of a fantastical style that I really responded to. And I don't think it's just because I don't really know the music of Robbie Williams. I know that was a lot of the discussion whenever this came out, of just how Americans don't know Robbie Williams, so that can't work. I don't think you need to know the music of a musician in order to get into a story about their life. One of my favorite movies of last year was Kneecap. I didn't even know that they were a real band until after the movie ended. So that wasn't kind of the blockade for me. And but the music itself, I wasn't the biggest fan of. There was a couple of songs that I did really like. I believe one was called Angels. People who are big Robbie Williams fans will be screaming at me for not knowing it right off the bat. But that one was pretty solid. Rock DJ is okay. I think that was a little bit overblown. But the movie is well directed. It's from the director of The Greatest Showman. And overall, I think it's a pretty fun movie. I like a little bit of inventiveness in this genre. I just don't think it did enough for me to really elevate it to something amazing. But as I said, I did like it more on a second viewing. Maybe it'll keep improving for me as I get to know these songs more and just appreciate more about this life of Robbie Williams and his kind of cheeky humor and everything. But if you're a fan of the movie, this is a really good 4K presentation in Dolby Vision. Looks fantastic. Dolby Atmos audio. This is a musical, so you want big all-encompassing audio, and that's what really happens with this one. It sounds great, looks great. A couple of featurettes are here that aren't too substantial, but it does add a little bit of context into how they created some of these sequences and made this come to life and everything. But Better Man on 4K. If you're a Robbie Williams fan, definitely check this out. Otherwise, maybe try before you buy, because this is kind of a polarizing movie, but it is worth checking out just for kind of the audacity of doing something different within the biopic genre with the CGI monkey and everything. So make sure to check it out in some form, and if you like it, this 4K is pretty solid. Continuing my stream of somewhat disappointments, I know I'm starting off on more of a negative slope after Lilo and Stitch, and it's going to continue for a second, but it'll pop right back up here in a second. Also from Paramount, is the 4K Ultra HD release of Star Trek Section 31. This is a new Steelbook release of their Paramount plus original movie. This is starring Michelle Yeoh. There is a standard version of this release as well, but this is the steelbook version, which I'm showing off. So I enjoy the Star Trek films. I've watched Star Trek, most of this like more modern series that are coming out after I reviewed like Next Gen and the original series as well. So I'm kind of like a medium Star Trek fan. I haven't seen every single series, but I've seen a lot of them, and I've seen Discovery and Strange New World and stuff. But this one is a kind of a continuation of sorts, spinoff of Discovery, which is one of the most polarizing Star Trek series in modern day. As a movie, kind of a standalone movie, it's not a good Star Trek movie. And I wouldn't even say it's really a good movie in general. It's passable, but as a Star Trek movie, it's very bad because it really doesn't get to the emotional core of what a Star Trek movie should be. It's more kind of like in the quippy, Marvelized, like Guardians of the Galaxy-esque tale. This is continuing with this character we know from Discovery, played by Michelle Yeoh, and kind of dealing with kind of like a ragtag group. She's kind of called upon to like, she ends up having to join this group. They're trying to track down this like very powerful item, and there's moles and duplicity and like get team building and all kinds of stuff in this that it's really kind of like very thrown together in a way. It's like only an hour and a half long, and there's like a lot of story packed into this, but also not a lot happens. So I'm of two minds of this, like of whether it should have been like a limited series or just should not have been made at all. I think a lot of Star Trek fans would probably pick the latter version. There were things that I found entertaining enough with it, mostly because I like the cast members. I do like Michelle Yeoh. Sam Richardson, I really love him, and he's great in this. Even if his character is just kind of like more of like a quip machine. But a lot of it's just very telegraphed and just very obvious where things are heading, especially in regards to people who may be like a mole on the team and stuff like that. I had more fun with this than a lot of viewers I've seen saying this was like complete trash. But it really is more so underwhelming than like extremely bad for me. Like I think like this doesn't go to what Star Trek should be, but if you know you like it, if you tried this out on like Paramount Plus and you like it, this is a good 4K release. This does come in Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos audio, all the bells and whistles and stuff. Looks great, sounds great, as any modern movie should look on and sound on 4K. You do get a fair amount of special features, over an hour of special features, various featurettes and a gag reel and everything. I don't know. Even if you're a Star Trek fan, be wary of this. I would probably try before you buy. But if you do like it, check it out. It seems more of a cash in and trying to like capitalize on Michelle Yeoh's recent Oscar win, rather than being like a genuine need for a continuation of the Star Trek franchise and stuff. So not the greatest entry, not complete trash, just more disappointing. So Star Trek Section 31 on 4K Ultra HD. There you go. One more to go into kind of the more disappointing pile, also from Paramount. I'm not trying to rag on Paramount, but this is the final installment of what we know as Yellowstone. This is season 5, part 2. Now, Yellowstone will continue after this with spin-offs, and there's all kinds of stuff in the Taylor Sheridan universe, but this is the final outing of Yellowstone. And in these last 6 episodes, I'll try to keep things spoiler free for those who haven't seen. This is kind of packaged in with the package. We are dealing with the fallout of losing a main driving force in this series that's been pretty pivotal, and how the characters react to this. moving forward. And these are all kind of postcards and stuff. And how that kind of tries to wrap itself up in rapid succession in these final 6 episodes. And it does not always do so the most graceful way. The finale is a bit of a mixed bag for me. I think because one of the big things with Yellowstone has always been like land and who controls it and stuff, and legacy and all that kind of stuff. There are three discs here, so the second one is piled on top of the third. There were elements I liked about how they wrapped this up, but I think a main performer's sudden departure really just threw them for a loop, and they didn't really kind of know how to end the series like sufficiently, but they knew that they couldn't carry on without them as well. So it's good to have closure for this series, but it wasn't the most satisfying way to wrap this up. There's some good things, there's a lot of disappointing things, there's a lot of just messy writing to just kind of tie this all together. So while I did enjoy the ride of Yellowstone, there were a lot of ups, few downs, including in this last batch of episodes. Overall, a net positive for the series as a whole, and I think if you've started the series, you'll want to finish it up. It's just not the most satisfying finale for these last 6 episodes, but they are now on Blu-ray. You can own the whole series. Over 2 hours of special features with various featurettes, Dolby True HD 5.1 soundtrack, sounds great. Looks great with these 6 episodes spread over 3 discs, so a lot of room for things to breathe with special features and stuff. So great audiovisual presentation. Just once again, just kind of a disappointing outing in terms of like quality, but it's not a complete failure either. But now I'm getting into one of my favorite labels where maybe quality also isn't the best, but there's a lot more fun to it. We are heading over to Arrow Video and the very highly anticipated release of Jason Goes to Hell. This is the 9th Friday the 13th movie. Well, I guess technically not a Friday the 13th, but Jason Voorhees, in the franchise, the Friday the 13th franchise. This is his outing, but this is also controversial. So just so you know, this is the reversible cover art for this slipcover here that I showed off. So if you want the original iconic artwork, you can flip that over. So this installment of the franchise is very controversial because outside of like the first film, this is the least amount that you actually get Jason in here. You get a very cool opening at the beginning with Jason, but then it turns into a very different type of horror movie, where you have kind of like a body jumping movie with like possession and with Jason's spirit trying to find a way to be reborn and stuff. It's a very different take on the franchise. It's very Looney Tunes, but it's not unheard of in terms of like this type of plot device. It's been used in a lot of horror movies, but for this franchise, it was just a little bit strange and sometimes a little bit boring, but also quite a bit of fun in some ways. It's very gross with like the kind of demonic worm figure slithering into various people and entities and stuff. And I don't know, there's the theatrical cut and the unrated cut. Both of these are in 4K Ultra HD. Overall, mixed bag of an actual movie, but it's more fun than it's not, and still the Friday the 13th franchise, and I have a soft spot for getting into this world and just what they have to offer. But one thing that did distract me is I think this has a super overbearing score, which I could not quite get into as much. Apologies to this iconic composer, but I just thought it was very overbearing, and it just really distracted me from this one. But I had more fun with it than I didn't, and it's always just fun to spend some time with Jason. So this was previously included in the Scream Factory box set. It's like a great, amazing box set. But I believe that was from a 2K scan of the Interpositive. This one comes from a 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative. And this also has the unrated cut in 4K, as I mentioned. So that's the one I spent most of my time with, is the unrated cut. And both of these look fantastic. The unique footage for the unrated cut comes from a new scan of the interpositive. They blend together quite well. You won't see a lot of like dip in quality anytime you get to the unrated footage. It looks pretty consistent. I can usually trust Arrow to put out the absolute best video quality possible, and they've done a really nice job with this one. I think this is a really nice upgrade from that old Scream Factory Blu-ray that was included in that set. They really just knocked out the park in terms of like original grain structure has been retained, and it's just nice and filmic, and some nice colors, deep black levels, all that kinds of stuff. Everything just holds up very well. So if you're a fan of this movie, this is the ultimate way to watch this one. It's been given a nice presentation, 5.1 and 2.0 audio. This has always been a film that hasn't sounded the best in terms of the audio, and that kind of carries over here, but it's not like absolute garbage or anything. It's just how this has always been mixed just hasn't been the most sonically pleasant. And like I said, I didn't like the score as well, so that was kind of overbearing, but it's not the crispest audio presentation, but it sounds pretty good. You get 3 audio commentary tracks, one of which is new, 2 is carried over. You get a introduction, 3 new interviews, and pretty much all the archival interviews from that Scream Factory release, including featurettes and stuff. So you get the booklets, versatile poster, tons of special features, 2 cuts of the film in 4K, in excellent quality. So if you're a Jason fan, Jason Goes to Hell, this 4K release from Arrow Video is a can't miss. Make sure to check it out. It's a really, really fantastic release. And continuing on with the Jason love, we also have the next sequel, that is Jason X. This was the first film that was released while I was like kind of conscious of a Jason, and I remember this being released in theaters. I didn't get to watch this in theaters, I don't believe, but I was so stoked for this whenever it came out. While it doesn't hold up as well as it did in my memory, it has so much charm to it and fun. I just did not remember it being so much like feeling like a made for sci-fi movie, sci-fi television. But it's just Jason in space. I could try to explain why he's in space in the future, but he gets there, and it's Jason just taking out people on a spaceship, and the movie is very self-aware, so it has fun with it. It's a wild time, and I mostly had fun with it. My wife is not like she hasn't watched I don't believe any Friday the 13th movies, but I made sure to show her the iconic sleeping bag scene in this one, and she had a good laugh at that. And there's some really good kills in this one, including like the one with the cryogenic freezing of a face. That one's pretty good. I like how they use some of the holograms and stuff to great effect. But with that means there's also some very dated digital effects in this one, being the early 2000s. So any digital effects that have always looked kind of iffy look as bad as they have ever looked. The very corny looking. But that is also part of the like kind of charm of the movie. So this has been given, it says in the booklet, it has been given a 4K scanning of the original camera negative. It has always been my understanding that there was not a cut negative for them to scan for this one, because this was one of the early kind of digital productions. But I will go with what Arrow is saying and say this is original camera negative. But this being still being an early digital production, that being a truth, that does mean that there is a limit to how good this can look. So it is not like a more night and day upgrade like Jason Goes to Hell. There's refinements here, mostly in the colors and stuff, but there is still kind of a softer quality to this one than other Jason Friday the 13th films, because you don't have that filmic quality as much, and there's so many digital effects in here that just, it doesn't lend itself to being like uber crisp or just like clean. It's just kind of like the best as it can look under the circumstances without them doing a complete 4K rebuild and redoing the special effects, all kinds of like very costly stuff. The same things that I criticized with the recent Kill Bill releases kind of holds true with this one. So it is an upgrade from the Scream Factory release, but if you are hoping the same amount of upgrade as Jason Goes to Hell, you're not going to get that here. But it is the best way to own this. This also comes with the 5.1 and 2.0 soundtrack. And this comes in Dolby Vision. The Dolby Vision does help this a lot with like the dark corners and everything. You do get an intro. You get 3 commentary tracks, 1 new, 2 archival. You get 1 new interview. You get an archival documentary and all the other archival special features, interviews and stuff. So Jason X and Jason Goes to Hell join the Jason 2009 remake from Arrow Video on 4K, and these all look really nice together and they all play really well together. So if you're a Jason fan, it's a good time for the latter era, and hopefully we get Freddy versus Jason from Arrow, but if not, I want it from someone, but preferably Arrow, because they've been really knocking it out of the park with their 4K releases. Moving on from that franchise, but still in the land of Arrow, we have the Andromeda Strain. This is a Michael Crichton novel directed by Robert Weiss, and this is a pretty solid sci-fi tale. This is reversible cover art here, which I do quite like. This was from the 70s, and it's about kind of an alien probe that lands in a pretty secluded town with like 80 residents or so. And whenever the military tries to come to collect it, they've found that almost everyone in the town has died, and they're trying to figure out what has occurred to make this everyone in this town die. This is really just about scientists really going into the nitty-gritty of doing cool science stuff to figure out how to protect humanity from dying from whatever is wrong. So it starts off really especially cool with exploring the town and everything, but then most of the latter half of the movie is them just doing hardcore scientific tests and just really trying to get down to figure out what is happening. And while this may seem like it could be a little bit boring, they make this very gripping a lot of times in terms of their protocols and having to make sure no one carries any viruses or anything on them and being disinfected. And the tension, it's just a prime 70s paranoid thriller era, and this kind of encapsulates that quite well. It's just a really great story that's told very well. It's kind of a different pacing than a lot of modern thrillers are, but if you kind of like that prime 70s paranoid thriller pacing, this works quite well. I've never owned this before. This was released previously by Arrow Video on Blu-ray back in 2019, I believe. And so I don't have that to compare, but this comes from that same base restoration, which was a 4K restoration of the original camera negative. Only now it is in Dolby Vision and it's native 4K, and it looks terrific. This has that perfect natural 70s film grain, very textured and gritty, but cleanly resolved, no compression artifacts. All the colors are very nice. Everything resolves well. Just so pleased with this. Original audio, original mono is included. You get a commentary track, you get an appreciation piece, you get a making of featurette. So some good special features. But if you have the old Arrow Blu-ray, which I've heard was terrific as is, this is a really great upgrade, but I'm not sure if it's a great upgrade from that disc specifically, because it was already so great. But if you don't own it, this is the way to own it. And even if you do already own it, I suspect that you'll probably cave and want to own this on 4K. It does look really amazing from Arrow, and they've done a really nice job with yet another 4K. Always love what they put out, and this is a really good release for it. And now we are going to go down a path of one of my favorite labels. We're going over to the land of Vinegar Syndrome, and my first release is from their Cinematograph sublabel. And we have Drop Zone on 4K with Wesley Snipes and Gary Busey. This is a blast. I had never seen this movie before, and I watched this with my wife, and we had so much fun. Our only regret is that we weren't able to save this for a 4th of July viewing, because we learned that this is a 4th of July film, but we had a blast watching this story about, it starts off with a plane heist hijacking, in which a prisoner is kidnapped off a plane and taken while the world presumes him to be dead. Wesley Snipes' character is trying to convince everyone that this actually happened and that it wasn't just a plane malfunction and stuff. It leads to like a whole kind of him going not undercover, but him infiltrating this skydiving like school, and it's all kinds of messiness of just like there's a skydiving competition that he is trying to enter to find out who these expert skydivers were, so they can like enter this world and figure out who committed this crime that left someone he loved dead. And there's all kinds of stuff. It's a bonkers plot in order for them to do a series of really cool like skydiving sequences. So they kind of build this plot around like, hey, we want a movie where we do a lot of cool skydiving, and they're like, all right, we'll figure this out. And that's what they basically do with Drop Zone. But it's done in such a fun way. I had a blast. Directed by John Badham, who always does a really good job. Fun cast, great skydiving sequences, great action. It hits everything I want out of like a kind of a mindless 90s action movie. But it does have like really good performances, enough like knowing winking cheesiness to satisfy. It's just so much fun. If you love action films that are ridiculous but in a good way, Drop Zone is like right up there with the best of them in my opinion. And this release from Cinematograph, terrific. So this comes from a new 4K restoration from the 35mm original camera negative in Dolby Vision. Looks terrific. They've done such a good job with this 4K restoration. It's one of the better 4Ks I've seen in a little while, just in terms of like such rich clarity and colors and encoding wise. This is just a really nice 4K. Maybe it's because I was having so much fun with it, but it is really a nice 4K. DTS 5.1 sound. It has 2 new commentary tracks, 2 interviews, a video essay. Cinematograph, I love them so much, and this is kind of a detour from like their normal programming of like kind of like more like indie or artsy films and stuff, like underrated like American dramas. This is delving more into the action sphere, which the curator Justin LaLiberty has not done to this point, but he wanted to troll fans a little bit in a pleasant way, and he's done a really nice job with this one to just open up this series to be anything that basically his warped mind wants it to be, but he always delivers some great stuff for us. And this is one of my favorite releases from the line so far. So keep it up, Justin. It's a really great release. But sticking in the Vinegar Syndrome family for one of the more controversial titles I'll be talking about this week. This is from Distribpix. This is their more adult oriented sub-label from Vinegar Syndrome. This is Last Tango in Paris from Bernardo Bertolucci. So this actually has reversible cover art, which I'll show off here. This is a standard release I'm showing off, but there is a slip-covered release if it's still around. The cover that I just showed on the Mezzolines, like their adult-oriented site. But if you go to the Vinegar Syndrome site, you can get a slipcover with this artwork. I think people generally prefer the other artwork, but just showing both of those off here. And you can see both of those artworks on the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc here. But if you just want the standard version, you can do the reversible cover art here as well. So this is actually my first time watching Last Tango in Paris. It is a film that is kind of notorious and I've always kind of heard about, so I was very interested to check it out. So whenever I saw it was being released in 4K, I knew I wanted to check it out, even if I may have had some reservations in some respects, just due to certain stories that had come out in like over the decades, especially like in the early 2010s or so, that there was a scene that the lead actress in here was not properly prepared for. It was like a simulated rape scene, but it's mostly her objection to the use of butter in this, from what I understand of this scenario, that kind of traumatized her and really just kind of was a really unfortunate scenario for everyone involved in just terms of like not getting consent for certain scenes before filming and everything. So all that kind of was kind of in the back of my mind. So I kind of went into this a little bit guarded, to be honest. But even with that, I can really appreciate what this film accomplishes. It is a very adult film. It's NC-17. Of course, as anyone who's watched this series for any amount of time knows, that I really respond pretty negatively to scenes of like sexual assault and everything, which a scene this movie does include. But that did not completely like ruin the movie for me in terms of just seeing these two. It's about the two people that are kind of very damaged in very certain ways, or just kind of lost in their own worlds at the beginning of the movie. Especially Marlon Brando's character, who's an older man who has recently suffered a loss, and the young woman that he meets randomly on Parisian streets. She's kind of like with a guy who she doesn't really love, but she's kind of trying to find her way in the world and everything, and meets this mysterious man, and they kind of start to have not really an affair, since neither of them are married, but just kind of like a sexual tryst. But it's kind of like more of anonymous, mostly due to Marlon Brando's character's insistence. But how that dynamic of these two kind of damaged people, they're like the power dynamics, and them like trying to heal certain wounds within them, and keeping each other at like an arm's distance, or whenever they let each other in, how they respond in certain ways, and they are very rough with one another. More so Marlon Brando with the younger girl. So it can be a tough film to watch in terms of like strained power dynamics, and just hurting people, and just people pushing past boundaries way past the point that they should. There's a lot of stuff in here that it's interesting to analyze, but it's also very beautifully shot, and the performances are great. Marlon Brando is one of the great actors. He does a really nice job here. Maria, the young woman, she does a really good job in like her very youthful role, and just the amount of emotion she's able to bring to this role, I think, is very powerful. And it's just it is quite a complicated movie to discuss and to analyze and everything. But I think with interesting art, you kind of have to do that sometimes, if it's done well enough and it's done to a point where it is worth kind of that analysis. I think this movie is, despite its controversies, is worth some kind of artistic analysis. So I am glad that I watched it, and I did overall think it's a very worthy movie, and I'm glad to own it. And I will say that none of the special features really delve into the controversial aspects I've talked about. It mostly just includes like some featurettes with some people who worked with Bertolucci, and like an archival interview with Bertolucci that doesn't even really talk about the movie itself that much. So there are some special features in here, but don't expect kind of like a deep analysis of the movie itself. But I think what people will mostly be coming to this 4K for is the audiovisual presentation, which is fantastic because this has been given a 4K restoration of the original 35mm camera negative, approved by the director of photography, Vittorio Storaro. If I'm not pronouncing that correctly, my apologies. But this has a very specific kind of like amber look to it. If you've seen any Bertolucci movies, you know he has a very distinct style that I think, from what I can tell from previous releases that I do not own, but I've seen screen caps of, they really did not have this very distinct like filters and looks and stuff that were always supposed to be there. So this movie is really really being restored to its intended glory here on 4K. And it just looks really nice and filmic and looks really, really great on 4K. You had the original mixture of French and English audio. It's the original audio track. So most of the times French is being spoken, but then there are exchanges in English, especially from Brando. But he also speaks French as well. So original soundtrack in mono sounds really good as well. A little bit of like the expected age of like a film of this vintage, but overall it holds up very well and sounds really good. Last Tango in Paris, very adult, very controversial, very like lots of sexual encounters and stuff. But if you're adult enough to try to reckon and like watch all this content, it is a really good release for cinephiles to check out. So Vinegar Syndrome and Distrib Picks, really cool that they took a chance on this one, and they've done a really nice job with it. And continuing on with the partner label slate, first we have a release from IFC Films, staying in the kind of erotic zone, going more towards a thriller aspect. We have Love Crime, the final film from Alain Corneau, which we talked about Corneau in recent episodes. He had a really cool release, a trio of films from Radiance Films. I talked about a few episodes back. That is very much worth checking out. So it's cool to kind of get him with his final film, starring Kristen Scott Thomas and Ludwig Sanier. So this is about a kind of a unhealthy workplace dynamic between a boss and her underling, and kind of what starts happening whenever the boss starts taking credit for the underling's work, and the underling feels like she's being humiliated by her boss, and how that kind of bubbles over in a tale of like seduction and deception and all that kind of good stuff that a good erotic thriller does. This is actually a little bit more straightforward in terms of like how it plays out. It actually surprised me on how things escalated, or at the pacing of how things escalated and then looped back around and everything. I think it's a very interesting movie. I did quite enjoy kind of like the mystery element of it. Sometimes I was a little baffled about certain things, but it did end up, while being a little bit maybe a little unrealistic, I still think it was very interesting. But Love Crime, it's a fun movie, and if you like erotic thrillers, I would check it out. This comes, like I said, from IFC. So this was like in I believe it was 2010 or so, whenever this was originally released. So I don't see anything about any like remaster or anything, but this is a solid HD master. Nice bold colors, no major artifacting. Everything just kind of is pretty solid encoding wise, and the original audio. In terms of special features, you get a commentary track and a video essay. But French erotic thrillers, if you want to check it out, Love Crime's a good disc. Heading over to Film Movement Classics, we get a re-release of the Eric Rohmer, the Marquise of O. So this has Bruno Ganz here. I, in recent years, have become a fan of Rohmer, and I was interested to check this one out. But this Blu-ray did originally come out in 2015. This is a reissue of that through the Ocean Distribution Vinegar Syndrome partnership. And so, as with Love Crime and everything I'm about to talk about for the next several partner label releases, if you do want a slipcover, make sure to go to Vinegar Syndrome's website or select indie retailers like Diabolic to get a slipcover and pay a little bit extra for that. But I'm talking about the standard releases of all these. So if you have the previous release from 2015 and you would only be getting the standard version, there's no difference in terms of disc quality. This is a story of a woman who is rescued from an attack. This is a period piece. Rescued from an attack by a officer of the opposing side of this kind of coup that is happening. And then the officer starts to fall in love with her after rescuing her. But then mysteriously, you have to kind of guess if this is going for magical realism or if there's something more sinister afoot or just duplicitous. She starts to show signs of being pregnant, almost like an immaculate conception. But she is a widow, and she's claimed she has not been with anyone since her husband died. And it's her family not believing her and her trying to figure out her situation of like steadily growing pregnant, not knowing what has happened, being estranged from her family, and being pursued by this man who has rescued her, but is also in the midst of fighting a war. And it's a very tangled web that I'm trying to explain in as quick terms as I can without giving away the whole game. But this is not my favorite Romare. What I've watched is probably a little like lower tier for me. But I did like it. I've liked all of his films, and this one is just another addition to that. Bruno Ganz puts on a good, occasionally annoying performance in terms of how the character acts, but he does a good job in it. Our main actress here, who I do not recall her name, I apologize, but she does a really good job as well. It's like a pretty solid period piece, like interesting drama of manners and everything. I enjoyed it, but it's just not, if I was going to recommend one Romare film, it definitely wouldn't be this one, but it is another. If you're catching up and you want to catch more from him, it is a solid period piece. You do get. This is like I said, it was originally from 2015, so you get an HD restoration from that time. I don't have any details besides it just being called an HD restoration, but it's pretty solid. It's a little bit soft at points, but overall handled pretty well. Maybe small anomalies here and there that keeps it from being perfect, but overall decent release. You get 2 interviews, but nothing else in the way of special features. So the Marquise of O by Eric Romare. Worth checking out if you're a fan of like period pieces or Romare, but just not his best work. Sticking with film movement classics, but going for a brand new release from them. This is a documentary. This is Artie Shaw, Time Is All You've Got. This is a pretty standard documentary from 1985. This actually won the Best Documentary at the Academy Awards back in the day, whenever this was originally released. And it's just a pretty standard documentary of a present-day Artie Shaw speaking about his life. He was one of the big figures of like kind of early like American jazz, like big band jazz type stuff going on. And it's him in his later years in like the 80s, early 80s, talking about his life. He was like married to Ava Gardner for like a year or so and just like had like a pretty interesting life. It's not like a lot of like twists and turns or anything, but if you want to know more about this like jazz icon, like art, this is a solid documentary, and this has been restored in 4K by Film Movement, and it looks fantastic. This has a commentary track in terms of special features and like the booklet like I showed off. But yeah, it's just for jazz enthusiasts, check it out. But this is from a time where documentaries were not as flashy, so some people who aren't a fan of the subject may find this a little bit dull, especially at almost 2 hours. But overall, I found it a decently engaging watch, but it's not my favorite documentary I've watched this outing. But for jazz fans, it is worth checking out. So Artie Shaw, Time Is All You've Got. Put that on your list. From Film Movement, leaving behind the classics label, just Film Movement, we have Playground. So this was a Belgian international feature submission a couple of years back that I had not gotten to watch yet, but I really like this one quite a bit. It frustrated me, but mainly because I cared about the characters and what they were going through, because it is very simply about a young girl who is going to school with her slightly older brother. You can see them here. And he is getting bullied, and she basically does not know what to do. She tries to help him and stuff, and sometimes that makes things worse, or like things backfire on her. And this is really just a tale of like bullying and on the schoolyard, and just how horrible it can be. And it's a very brief movie. It's only like an hour and 12 minutes, but it uses that time very well. And I felt so much for these young performers and these characters, and just how the kind of senselessness of how certain kids act with one another in terms of like hurting each other's feelings. It really just like got to me in like a really distinct way. So I found this movie very impactful. I've seen like similar movies in recent years, like Close or The Teacher's Lounge, like set in like kind of a school setting. I put that right up with them in terms of like my appreciation of like what international cinema, the gems that they bring me. I really like Playground. It's a newer movie, so HD transfer looks great, sounds great. The original French, and you get a short film with this, but that's pretty much it. But I'm glad Film Movement has really beefed up their upgrade of their DVDs to Blu-ray, because I don't really collect DVDs when I can avoid it. So I'm glad to be able to watch this on Blu-ray. It looked very good. So check it out if you like really great international cinema. Heading over for another partner label for Magnolia Pictures. We have their 2006 release of Severance, not the Apple TV show. This is I believe Christopher Smith, Christopher Smith directorial outing, in which a team building exercise in a remote wooded area goes awry, and people start getting picked off in a slasher like style. And yeah, things just really escalate, and it's bloody, it's a little humorous and tongue-in-cheek and corporate satire, and just it's a pretty solid like slasher, like some decent kills, some gruesome moments. I enjoyed it overall. It appears like it was shot in like kind of the early digital like cameras and stuff. So I'm not sure how this was upscaled to HD, but it's not like the most crisp looking picture, but it looks solid. It has like kind of that digital sheen that doesn't completely like look amazing, but it looks good. I think this is the best this footage can look. Audio sounds good as well. And in terms of special features, you get a new commentary track and a bunch of archival special features, including another commentary track, featurettes, deleted scenes. You have a whole list of things here of just like featurettes and stuff that kind of are included, along with some new stuff as well. So I'm so glad that Magnolia has started beefing up their Blu-ray output as well. And this is a really nice gem from their kind of deep catalog that I know a lot of people were clamoring for, and they've done a nice job with the HD transfer and special features and everything. So if you're a fan of this film, make sure to check that out. Continuing on to a really kind of very pleasant animated movie. This is from Cartuna, and it is When You Get to the Forest. It's a pretty simple tale. This is another kind of shorter one at like, I believe this is also at an hour and 12 minutes. And this is about a young woman who is kind of trying to take kind of a cathartic trip to the woods to kind of like get away from the world. And while trying to hike this trail, she ends up getting lost in kind of like almost kind of a fantastical way, like in off of the trail, and some mist falls down like kind of like a small ravine, and kind of loses her sense of place and everything. All she knows is whenever she wakes up, she doesn't know where she is, and there's this really cute cat that is there that she can suddenly talk to. So it's her kind of like building a life for herself in the woods for like a year or so, and just like experiencing life off the grid, processing things, getting close to this cat. It's very charming, very gentle. There are some kind of tense moments of like tension and stuff. So it's not like completely spineless or anything, but it is really kind of like a warm, inviting, contemplative movie, and that's completely my jam. So Cartuna really delivered with this one for me. I really enjoyed it. Great this is pretty much animated by one person from what I can tell, and they've done a really nice job. It's not like the most like cutting edge or anything, but what he was able to accomplish was very impressive, and it looks really, really nice and kind of like a handmade way that I really appreciate. Audio is not overly bombastic, but it holds up very well. You do get a commentary track, a making of documentary, a production diary featurette. Really just a fantastic release from Cartuna. I had never heard of this film, so I'm really glad that they keep bringing animated gems into my life because I love animation, and this one is a cool addition. Heading over to a label I don't get to talk about too much, but I was happy to check this one out. From Factory 25, we have Louder Than You Think, a lo-fi history of Gary Young and Pavement. So this is about one of the very early members of Pavement, the rock band, and he's a very kind of like erratic figure that had like struggled with like alcoholism and stuff, and just being just kind of like a very wild presence. He claimed to do like, it was something like 300 tabs of acid whenever he was younger, and it kind of like left his brain kind of scrambled. And so you have like a modern day Gary, or at least when this was filmed, telling kind of his story along with various members of Pavement and other people who were friends with him, kind of contributing kind of this overall story of like when Gary was in Pavement, but like whenever they're starting to take off, and then like kind of getting kicked out of Pavement before they really like hit like the stratosphere in terms of their success. And just kind of learning that story and everything. It's interesting to kind of see his many faults, but also seeing the kind of special magic he would bring to the shows and the band whenever he was like lucid and on, and like what he could accomplish whenever he wasn't burdened by his eccentricities and his vices. It's a really fascinating documentary, and I don't know a lot about Pavement, but I was very much willing to learn because I've heard so much about them over the years, and this was like a good puzzle piece to include, and like I'm going to continue to learn about them. But this is a really good documentary if you're a Pavement fan, and if you want to know more about Gary Young. This does a really nice job. Solid audiovisual presentation. This is a documentary made in recent years. It looks really good. You get a commentary track, deleted scenes, featurettes. So overall, really solid release of this one, Louder Than You Think. Another documentary that we have from memory is Physician, Heal Thyself. This is a documentary about Gabor Mate. So this is about a doctor who kind of like shows him his story about like surviving, kind of like he was in Hungary, and he kind of survived kind of like the fallout of like World War II and the rise of like Nazis and stuff, and like how it impacted his family, and kind of how his kind of generational trauma has lingered within him, how it impacted his upbringing, how he tried to grow up to be someone who could be of service and help people, and his early kind of exposure to Zionism, and then being kind of radicalized against Zionism, and kind of learning about how like what he was fed maybe had not been always true. And there's a lot of stuff in here that it's very interesting. I did not know anything about this person beforehand, but this made a pretty compelling documentary about him and his life. Maybe not easily accessible for like a kind of the modern, like our average viewer that doesn't like go deep into documentaries. But if you know the subject, I think you'll be interested. If you are just wanting to, if you're more of a person a documentary lover who wants to just learn about new, interesting people, maybe check this out. But it's not super accessible for those who just want like a blanketly I wouldn't say this is like an entertaining documentary, but it's very informative and interesting in its own way. But Memory's done a good job. Newer documentary, good audiovisual presentation, and in terms of special features, get a Q&A and bonus scenes. So Physician, Heal Thyself from Memory, worth checking out if it sounds interesting to you at all. Next up, also on the documentary front from Icarus Films, they've always exposed me to some interesting films, and the next one is no different. It is a 2-pack of The Human Pyramid and The Punishment. These are 2 films by Jean Roche. So The Human Pyramid, that's the main feature. It is kind of a docu-fiction movie about, it's like Jean finding a group of students and convincing them to make a fiction film about students in this kind of this small town, and the impact of like trying to like the integration of black and white students, and how that kind of like how they interact with one another, and whenever they do try to make an effort to kind of hang out with one another more and socialize and like break through certain barriers, how that kind of impacts their dynamics and stuff, and how that the actor trying to make this film also impacts the actors who are trying to put on this film. It's kind of layered in a really interesting way, but I think it's a very fascinating exercise, and there's some interesting like kind of takeaways from here. Nadine, who's kind of like the standout of the movie, the actress who plays her, like a version of herself, actually goes on to star in The Punishment as a young student who is trying to find her place, and she is like kicked out of class one day, and she kind of goes walking around the city that she lives in. I believe it's Paris, and just kind of like coming across various people and just trying to like live and everything. So it's kind of hard to explain, but 2 interesting films from Jean Roche, and these have both been restored from 2K restorations. They look really nice, very textured and filmic and gritty, but in a really like cool way, and that's like retains all of its organic qualities. You get no features besides that, but like no like special features, but you get 2 actual features on here. So I think that itself is worth the price if you're interested in kind of interesting international cinema, docu-fiction stuff. The Human Pyramid and The Punishment, I like both of these. Heading over to something very different from ETR Media, we actually have what I did not know was a television series that is UnderDeveloped. This is kind of like an indie television series that I had not heard of, but it had people like Sam Levine, Dave Koechner, Tom Arnold, and some other people that I grew to appreciate. So this is just I believe it's a 6-episode series, and it's set in Hollywood, and it's kind of like a satire of a production company, and like just satirizing how difficult it is to kind of try to succeed, like develop interesting things in Hollywood, and like people who are kind of inept getting into bits of power and using that power and influence and nepotism and all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of like, it's just a workplace comedy in kind of like an indie flair. I didn't find it overly humorous, but I found it like amusing enough to stick with and everything. If you can find a way to sample this, I would probably recommend that, because it's not like laugh out loud funny as much as I want it to be, but it's a fine watch. It's kind of like a quick binge, and I like some of these performers enough that I was glad that I watched it. So you do get a commentary track on all the episodes. You get interviews, not too many, but a couple of brief interviews and a trailer. Good audio visual quality, and yeah, so if you want a quick sitcom that's probably never heard of, UnderDeveloped, maybe worth sampling. My last partner label title, and I apologize, this is a long one, as people who watch me regularly know, I often have very long episodes. But my last partner label is from Music Box Selects, and it is the sequel Heavier Trip. Now, I watched Heavy Trip a couple of weeks ago in preparation of like knowing I was going to receive this, and I very much loved Heavy Trip. Now, Heavier Trip picks up pretty much right after that one. I won't reveal what happened at the end of that one, but these Finnish metal band members are in a facility that they have to escape in order to play a festival, because they are trying to raise money to save one of their band members' dad's farm. That's like the basic conceit. And on this one, since you already have them a full-fledged kind of like band that's kind of solid and you kind of have all the member dynamics, in this one they are really trying to kind of tempt with flirt with how fame influences the artistic process, and like what is selling out, all this kind of stuff. It's not quite as good as the first movie, unfortunately, but it is still very funny, and I laughed a lot, and I still really, really enjoyed it. And so if you like metal music, if you like fun, like road trip comedies, anything like that, Heavier Trip and Heavy Trip are both worth owning. I think they're both really good movies. Some pretty cool metal music. I'm not a huge metal fan, but you do get the appearance of Baby Metal, which are this Asian metal band of like young women who I very nearly booked at the Performance Arts Center that I used to work at, but we could not secure them. But that was kind of a blast from the past of knowing them from whenever they were kind of a smaller band. But now they're a huge band and now appearing in movies like this one. Really, really fun movie. Great audiovisual presentation. No deficits or anything like that. You do get a couple of like behind the scenes featurettes and like brief interviews with like Baby Metal and everything. So Heavier Trip, really fun time for metal fans and comedy fans. Really good movie. But sticking with metal music, I wanted to make that connection with my next series from Universal. We have season 1, aka the only season of Hysteria. So this is kind of a take on the satanic panic of the 80s, in which a metal band in a small town takes advantage of the hysteria of a local death that people blame on a satanic cult, and since they are a metal band, they think they can ride this kind of sensation to like actually being discovered and everything, and how that kind of goes crazy whenever things like start getting a little bit more supernatural and everything. It's mostly centered around some younger performers, but you have people like Bruce Campbell and Julie Bowen, Anna Camp. It's just an unhinged, like, throw everything at the wall type of like horror comedy action film, like kind of tinged series. It can be a little bit much at times, but I did enjoy myself, and it for the 8 episodes. I wish there was going to be another season, but this is a satisfying season of television. This was on Peacock, so you can probably sample it if you need to check it out before you buy. But if you like it, this audiovisual presentation is great. No special features, but audiovisual wise, works out well. Heading over to our friends at MBD Entertainment, we had the kind of anthology film Tunnel Vision. This is kind of done from seemingly some of the people behind like the SCTV crew and stuff. So you have a lot of really cool people that show up in here. You have like Chevy Chase, John Candy, Howard Hessman, Joe Flaherty, Lorraine Newman, Betty Thomas, Ron Silver, Al Franken, Tom Davis. So if you've seen something like Kentucky Fried Movie or Amazon Women on the Moon, this is like kind of like those, but unfortunately not as good. So this is some very dated stuff in here, in terms of like some of the comedy that, while I'm not easily offended or anything, it's just like things just didn't really make me laugh, or it's just unfortunate, very like obvious jokes, and like a lot of like like rape jokes and sexist jokes and stuff. Just like, I don't know, just maybe you had to be there, but I did not enjoy particularly being there. There were a few things that I found kind of amusing, but I'm a sucker for like anthology films and stuff like this, like comedic kind of sketchy films. This just didn't really have enough jokes for me, and unfortunately, just did not really hit the mark for me. But if you're a fan of the film, I think MVD's done a nice job of rescuing this one, because I think maybe the only way to see this previously was like on like a crappy YouTube rip. But this does come from a new 4K transfer into it with two different aspect ratios. One is 1.66 by 1, and one is 1.33 by 1, and with the original mono. This mostly looks really great, but due to the nature of how this was filmed, there are certain segments that don't look really great, and I think that's kind of just how it was captured, so it cannot look any better. But it just overall is a really impressive looking transfer a lot of the times, but it just, some stuff doesn't look as good. But I think that's just by virtue of what this is supposed to look like at the source. You do get a commentary track and some interviews and a script, like a interactive script and stuff, and a couple of other like trailers and everything. So I'm always glad when NBD rescues something, especially that's very hard to watch otherwise. This just unfortunately did not hit for me. But if you kind of have like a more 70s sense of humor and everything, check it out. If you like these performers, maybe you still like it, but I like these performers and I didn't really like it. So buyer beware, but it is a good release if you like the people involved. Next up, we go to our friends who we haven't heard from in a while, Cult Epics and Wan Pipel, aka Wan Pipel. So this is one of the few films that was, or one of the more known films from Suriname. I tried to say that as best I could based on what I heard in the movie, but it is a country that is not super well known in terms of its filmmaking, but I really, I try to check stuff out from all over. So I checked this one out. This is about a guy at the beginning of the film. Our lead character here gets word that his mother is more than likely about to die, and he needs to like get back to his country. He is like in Holland, going to school and everything. And he needs to get back to home as soon as possible. And he, his girlfriend back in Holland, kind of arranges for him to get back to his country. And just, but whenever he gets there, he does get to see his mother, but she does pass away. But he kind of lingers in his old home. And he starts to realize like he really misses it, and he just kind of immerses himself back into the culture and just really finds himself loving everything, loving being around the people and just the food and everything. He just forgot how much he loved his home. And then he meets another woman, and they kind of start kind of a relationship, but she is of Indian descent, and there's like this is a kind of a cultural melting pot, but there's still kind of like, it's kind of like a relationship where like they are still different. Like it's kind of like a segregation is like kind of like their relationship would be frowned upon, like the two mixing and everything. And it's kind of causes all this controversy. And while his like everyone is kind of encouraging him to leave, and kind of leave this controversy behind. He's kind of like determined to stay at his home, and it kind of goes from there. So it's a really interesting character study. It is a country that I've never got to like even hear about before, and it's really great seeing this vibrant culture of great music, food, beautiful landscapes and everything. It's a really just immersive movie that I really enjoyed getting to check out and immerse myself in. And it's very entertaining. It's like almost 2 hours long, and I never found myself bored of just learning about these characters and traditions and all that kind of stuff. So Cult Epics, even just for letting me know that this movie exists, I appreciate that. But they've also put it out in pretty great quality. You do get a new 2K transfer that looks really nice. Maybe some minor things here and there, just based on how the source elements were. But overall, this is a really nice textured, filmic looking transfer. No major damage. Really just vibrant colors. Everything looks really nice. You get commentary track, an introductory introduction to the film, making of, interviews, and a bonus short film. So Cult Epics, really great release from them. Always love to hear from them. And Wan Pipel, very much worth checking out. Going to our friends at 88 Films, and we have Lady of the Law. This is yet another Shaw Brothers release. Pretty standard stuff in terms of it begins with a young boy witnessing the death of his mom, and he is spared from a similar fate by this kind of wise old martial arts master. She kind of gets to spare his life, and he grows up, and he kind of gets himself in the middle of a plot. He gets himself accused of attacking a woman that these other higher government officials actually killed and stuff, and he kind of finds himself on the run trying to clear his name when no one kind of believes his innocence. And the woman who was pursuing him was like a little girl who kind of convinced her mistress to spare his life. And it's kind of like mistakenly accused of a crime, trying to clear your name, and kind of martial arts stuff going along with it. Carried out by this Lady of the Law. And it's very entertaining. I really like this one. I find it very engaging, and it moved at a really good pace at just an hour and a half long. And nothing was overly making me irritated with the plot, which is always a plus. So really good Shaw Brothers outing from 88 Films. This comes from an HD transfer. Looks really nice from the negative materials. In the original Mandarin, it has a commentary track and some stills. This is a really nice consistent release from 88 Films. They've always done a nice job, and this is another good one from them. And finally, our final quartet of films was originally released by Cauldron Films as one set. Now they're releasing these individually. I did not have that original set, but I would kind of talk about these all as like an entity. This is from the House of Doom series. So we have House of Witchcraft from Umberto Lenzi. We have House of Lost Souls from Umberto Lenzi. We have The House of Clocks from Lucio Fulci, and The Sweet House of Horrors from Lucio Fulci. So 2 from Umberto Lenzi, 2 from Fulci. And these were all kind of made for TV films that, because they are from the directors that they are, they were too extreme, and they kind of like went crazy. Like The House of Lost Souls. This one is about a group of young geologists who kind of find themselves in, like, everyone is kind of finding themselves in like a house where crazy stuff is happening. And like House of Witchcraft is like about a journalist who once again finds himself in a house where he's kind of like he's kind of been cursed by a witch, and like how that kind of works out for him in terms of like he meets a young woman who he tries to get him to help him like make sense of what is happening to him and face off about like this evil entity in this house and how that kind of ends up. Lucio Fulci's first outing is House of Clocks. This one, I like Fulci's entries a little bit better because they're a little bit more distinct for me in my mind. Because Fulci, this involves like a group of like criminals who break into a house, but when they commit a crime, they kind of like the time starts kind of like going back in weird ways because of all these clocks, and they're like end up getting their comeuppance because of like this weird house and the rules that it lives in. And then the Sweet House of Horrors from Fulci, that one it involves like a couple getting murdered at the beginning of the film and leaving behind some children, and their new guardians and the children stay in the house, and the spirits of the couple linger and are kind of like almost becomes kind of Beetlejuice-esque of like the spirits hanging out and communicating with the kids, and they try like the culprit of who killed them is actually like sewed up pretty early into the proceedings, but then you also have just like the lingering spirits and everything to deal with. But these are all crazy house antics from Cauldron Films, and these were all been given a 2K restoration of original camera negative. They all look very good. They all kind of have a very soft lighting and appearance and stuff, but they look very nice and as it is intended. So they all have been given an English and Italian mono track, so English dub or the original Italian. For Witchcraft, we get a commentary track and two interviews. For Lost Souls, we get 2 commentary tracks and 3 interviews. For the House of Clocks, we get a commentary track and 7 interviews. And then for Sweet House of Horrors, we get a commentary track and 8 interviews. So I believe if you still want these all together in like a box set, I think you can still find these from Cauldron. But if not, you can buy them individually if you just care about Lindsay or Fulci or whatever. You can make your choice about what you want to collect, but these are all kind of very gnarly, like gory, disturbing horror films. So if you like these filmmakers, just because they were made for TV, don't expect them to be tame. They go all out. So this House of Doom collection, worth picking up from Cauldron Films. Now that is my show. For those who have watched the entire video, thank you. I hope you found something you liked. A lot of stuff on this one. Let me know in the comments what you're interested to check out. Make sure to share this with anyone you think might like anything in this video. I always appreciate the chance to expose more people to the gift of physical media. Make sure you like this video and make sure to subscribe to the Geek Vibes Nation YouTube channel. I really enjoy doing this for you every week. I hope you enjoy it. I will be back again next week with another fresh batch of titles. But until next time, enjoy.